Okay, welcome back to Secrets of Role Mangging for our Call of Cthulhu campaign, Masks of Nyarlathotep. And we saw a mask this session, didn't we? Yeah, it was pretty nuts. And I had to make a lot of impromptu decisions and stuff like that, some of which I am happy with, some of which I'd probably change if I could go back, but we'll talk about them. Overall, I'd say I'm not entirely pleased with where the investigation is right now, but I think we can get it back on track pretty easily. This session was definitely a major turning point for the campaign as far as mentality goes. I think this session, more than anything, was filled with a kind of sense of despair, where, like, it doesn't matter what they do, because, you know, this entity can just always watch them and can kill them at a moment's notice. What's the point? And it's an interesting thing, because as I said before, if Nyarlathotep is intent, and he's a very serious entity, deity, that just is solely focused on bringing, you know, these evil forces into the world, I almost have to agree then. What is the point? You're not going to win. You can't win. Well, how could you? He's a freaking god. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And so, the way that I'm running it, which is much more Loki style, I guess, he needs to kind of, it's supposed to be, at least in my mind, he's leading them along much more. And so maybe, you know, you have a chance, but, you know, it's all just a game. And so it's a balance that I need to kind of strike, and I think we swung a little bit too far one way this session. Okay, so let's go through here. Well, let's talk about the Penhew Foundation, shall we? Let's talk about Edward Gavigan. So, if they had not killed Makunga, of course, Makunga would have sent a telegram, a wire to Gavigan, saying that they had arrived, they were heading to London, and he would have sorted them out right away. Or he at least would have definitely been following them since they arrived. And so he would have known that they were coming. As it is, though, he did not know who any of these people were. And so he just kind of puts on the personality that he always shows in public. He's very genial. He's very kind. Very professional personality. And then when they started asking about the Carlisle expedition, it definitely piqued his interest. Because there's only been one other person that's asked about the Carlisle expedition, talked about it, in the last, you know, few years. And that's Jackson Elias. And he knew that Jackson Elias was killed because it was by his order. You know, Jackson fled, and so he had sent a telegram to Makunga saying, hey, kill this Jackson Elias guy. So, of course, he knew about his death, but he lied about it. He's like, oh, that's so terrible. And so, as soon as they mentioned the Carlisle expedition, of course he's suspicious. And they mentioned Jackson, and that made him more suspicious. And so, basically how it works is, if they mention any of that, if they mention the Carlisle expedition, if they mention Jackson, I don't know what they really have to, what they could mention that would not make Gavigan suspicious, because he's a suspicious guy. So, pretty much no matter what, as long as they speak to him, he's probably going to have them tailed by some cultists. So, as soon as they go to him, they are on the watch. And so, he told what little information he could, and how you run Gavigan can run it. You can go a few different ways. You could have him act much more distant. Much more cold to the group. Like, I don't have time for this. I'm sorry. You could kind of make him hate the guy, which would definitely be the kind thing to do. If you were trying to run a real easy campaign, I would be like, make him seem really suspicious right off the bat. But the evil way to do, and of course what I had to do, was make him seem very kind. Make him seem almost like an ally. Like, you know, if they need some information or some help, this guy might be the guy. And whether they fall for it or not, it doesn't really matter. If they do fall for it, they're in for a very harsh betrayal later on. And so, I think they were starting to fall for it, at least the first conversation that the group had, because they had mentioned the scepter. Which I was like, huh, they actually mentioned the scepter. And, now even in character, I was like, scepter? You know, it was like, it piqued his interest, of course, that this group that had talked to Jackson Elias, had been to New York, and were asking about the Carlisle Expedition, were apparently following up on this investigation, we're speaking of a scepter. Now, the scepters in this campaign have a bit of prominence, because Gavigan himself owns a pair of magical scepters. Tufik al-Sayed owns a pair of magical scepters. And so, I wonder if Gavigan would know about Makunga's scepter, which is not quite as powerful, but it is magical. And so, I wasn't real sure how I wanted to do that. But then they mentioned it a second time. Charlie Chalk, in his interview, also mentioned the scepter. And then he said it had an inverted ankh, and he read the inscription off. And I was like, it doesn't. Gavigan could figure it out. So now he knows this group killed Makunga. He did not know Makunga was dead. And so now he's like, oh shit. So now it's going to get pretty dangerous for them. Gavigan's still going to act nice, because he's hoping that the group will bring him the scepter. So he's not going to have his boys break into their place and try and get it. He's going to play this game out, but he is going to watch them constantly. Now, I didn't really get to play up on this session because of all the insanity. And so basically how it worked was, the guy that Edward thought he saw on the train was an Egyptian guy that was following them. The problem is, this cult mainly operates out of London. And so if they head outside of London, they're hesitant to go out there because Egyptians tend to stand out. The cult isn't all Egyptian, of course not, but it's mostly Egyptian. And so, yeah, of course they could send a white guy, but I'm being a little nice here. And so, this guy was following the two because they had just mentioned the inverted ankh, and Gavigan was like, follow these people. And so the group went out on the train to Derby, and they got a car to Lesser Adale. And so there the cultist kind of hesitated. He's like, you know, that's a small-ass village. They're going to notice me. So I'm just going to hold out here. That's outside of our range, you know. But I'll tell the guy, I'll tell Gavigan that they went out to this village called Lesser Adale. And so then they kind of just waited. They kind of hung out around the train station. This cult is pretty damn big. Like, I don't know where it talked about it. Yeah, that might have been the companion. But it was like, this cult can be anywhere in London. Like, they can pose as bellboys and clerks and whatever they need to. So, like I said, Gavigan is very powerful, very wealthy. So if he wants one of his cultists to be the new bellboy at a hotel, he's the new fucking bellboy, alright? There's no question about it. He'll make it happen. So, basically, he's just going to have one of his cultists just hanging out at the train station as, like, an employee or something. Somebody that carries bags on or some shit. There's a porter? Is that the word? Yeah, that might be. So, yeah. Anyways. So, he's just going to wait out for the group to come back. Now, the next day, Edward Gavigan gets up, gets his tea, his breakfast, and he checks the morning paper, and he sees a big-ass headline, big picture, what happened to Lesser Adale? And Gavigan is like, what the hell did happen to Lesser Adale? Now, he's probably... Gavigan... I wouldn't say more than anyone, but Gavigan is definitely in the top 5 people in the campaign that actually speaks to Nyarlathotep. As in, communicates with him regularly. There are other members of the campaign that do talk to Nyarlathotep regularly, but Gavigan's one of them. He's going to ask him about these investigators. Now, Nyarlathotep, whenever he is around the investigators, of course he's going to be Gulk, because that is the form that he enjoys most. That is his fuck around mask. But when he is speaking to any member, NPC in the campaign, really, any evil member of the campaign, he's all business. Because I still need to run this campaign. You know. This whole thing isn't a joke, but you know, he still can put on the business thing because he likes feeding on, you know, their insanity, and they react better when Nyarlathotep is, you know, the dark outer god rather than, oh, he's Gulk, you know. So that's how it works. So Gavigan's going to talk to Nyarlathotep, and he's going to be, who are these people? You know, what happened to Lesser Adale? And so the question is, what does Nyarlathotep really tell him? Now, obviously, he's not a huge fan of the truth. The question is, does he reveal that these people that he's having followed, are they... It's an interesting thing with Call of Cthulhu. You possess a lot of power as the DM because you control, you know, unlimited power, basically. Whether it be the mythos creatures or just, you know, humans. If Nyarlathotep tells Gavigan that these are just, you know, these are a great threat to our cause, kill them, Gavigan will have them killed. Like, there's very little I could have them do that would prevent that. Like, yeah, Gavigan tries to keep everything secretive, but if they're a threat to the plan, Gavigan will not hold out, you know. He'll send a dozen cultists, and he'll kill them. And so, Nyarlathotep doesn't want that, because if he wanted them dead, he would kill himself. And, like I said, Nyarlathotep is me, I am him, and I don't want them killed like that, so we need to drag it out a little bit longer. So what would he tell him that would drag it out a little bit longer? And I really should have thought about this before I did this video, but I'm going to just kind of sit here and talk about it because that should help me think. Now let's see. The only people left alive that Gavigan talked to were Reginald and Charlie. Reginald, I feel, is the most interested in returning to the Penhew Foundation. So what does Nyarlathotep have to say to Gavigan to prevent Gavigan from just killing Reginald? And to kind of not cooperate with him. Not be like, oh, he is a friend, work with him. Now, if you remember, I did say that I wanted Gavigan to point fingers at Tufik, because that's what Gavigan wants. So now we need to connect this bridge. Nyarlathotep to Gavigan to Tufik, using Reginald in the middle. Well, Nyarlathotep will tell Gavigan that he had to clear up some business in that village, or something dark and sinister like that. He's not going to lie to him and say that everyone died, because Reginald will go to Gavigan. So Gavigan, I don't know how he would feel that Nyarlathotep just lied to him. He would just... he'd probably feel a little bit hurt, I guess, but fuck him. But no, I wouldn't do that. So he's probably going to tell him that a couple members of that team still live. He'll tell him that they are nosy, but he has a bigger plan for them. That's what he would say. He has a bigger plan for them. Gavigan, I mean, he knows who he's fucking talking to, alright? He's not really going to question Nyarlathotep. He's not going to question a god. So, I guess Nyarlathotep would tell him to not kill them immediately. Pretty much. Because that's what I want. I'm not saying, never kill them, Gavigan. They are sacred to the cause. Because that's not what I want. I want there still to be danger. And Gavigan, in the heat of a situation, I don't want Gavigan to hesitate. He'll bust out his shotgun and blow him away. But I wanted this, while it's still kind of calm and collected, I want Gavigan to be aware that he's not supposed to kill him. Not yet. Alright? And that'll be pretty much it. Nyarlathotep's not going to give him much more information than that. And so, when they do go back to Gavigan, Gavigan will be much more interested in, well, yeah, I guess interested might be the word. Obviously, much more hesitant to just kill them off. Because he wants to figure out Nyarlathotep's plan, because Nyarlathotep is taking an interest in these people, and, obviously he wants the interest in himself. He wants to be the second in command. Who are these other people? These are just nobodies. I am Edward Gavigan, I'm your high priest. And so, will Gavigan... No. Gavigan won't trust them. He will not trust them because they killed Makunga. And he knows this. And he assumes Nyarlathotep knows this. So, why would he... He's going to be real conflicted about it, because he's like, what's going to stop these people from killing me? They killed Makunga, They don't seem to be a friend of, the cults. And so that will lead him... Well, Nyarlathotep said that I couldn't kill them, but what about Tufik? Perhaps I should lead them in that direction. And so there we go. We've connected the bridge. And so then Gavigan basically figures he can kill two birds with one stone. He doesn't get his hands dirty, and he doesn't defy Nyarlathotep, but he also potentially has a big altercation with them and Tufik. Now, he also potentially risks them discovering much more about the cult than they already know, but he might think that's worth the risk, and if they are somehow working with Nyarlathotep, they might have knowledge elsewhere. It's hard to say. He's going to take the risk either way because, well, I want him to take the risk. Alright, so we figured that out, okay? So, whether they bring the scepter to him or not does not really affect anything. If they do bring him the scepter, I know, he probably won't even confiscate it. Like, it doesn't really mean much to him. He has his own scepters. He knows they kill Makunga. But this plan that I just laid out for you is already going to be in motion. So having the scepter doesn't change anything, whether he has it or they have it. So that's inconsequential. Okay. So that's good. So the other thing about Gavigan, besides all the scepter stuff, is how the players feel about him. Now, I think they're definitely leaning to not trusting him. For one reason is, well, Golk told Reginald, don't forget about the Penhew Foundation, so obviously there's more to that than they discovered, which usually means something bad is afoot. The other reason is Charlie noticed the false panel. I was hesitant to allow that, but he succeeded well on a couple spot hit-ins, and so I was like, alright, I'll give it to him. And so his rationale was that nobody good has a false panel in their office. I don't know about that. I'm sure there's some false panels at the White House, but... oh, wait. Anyways. So what would they do about that information? Are they going to break into the Penhew Foundation? That's tricky, alright? That is difficult. Not impossible, but tricky. They could also distract Gavigan. That's definitely an option. If they're all in the building and they distract him with some Egyptian shit and somebody sneaks into his office, that could work. So if they ask him about it, as unlikely as it is, he'd probably pass it off as some, he'd say that Sir Aubrey was very secretive, and we've pretty much just walled that up now. If they do get in there, there is a secret room, of course. I think I kind of discussed this already. The secret room has some artwork, of which, of course, I would link it to Miles Shipley. It has a statue of the bloated woman. Addressed to Shanghai. It has a statue of Cthulhu. I'm almost certain I mentioned this, but I'll refresh. Statue of Cthulhu, which increases your magic points. I don't know how they would realize that. Yeah, it says unless the point becomes significant, so unless they cast a spell. It'd be like, well, you suddenly feel like you have more power than you thought you did. And there's also a bunch of books, and scrolls, and the powder of Ibn Ghazi. And there's also a... oh, there was the safe as well, which just contains a lot of money. Yeah. And the safe is unlocked, by the way, because he wants them to steal the money, because it's like marked notes, and so they could immediately identify who stole the money. So it's basically kind of a trap. But yeah, the secret room is nice to get into, mostly because of the books. There's the Gaharan fragments, the Book of Dizan, the actual Liber Ivonis, as well as I was going to throw in the Cult des Ghouls in there. And then there's a bunch of scrolls which contain some spells. So that's very nice to get into. Not as nice as his secret room at his mansion, but it's pretty nice to get in there. We'll see if they accomplish it. They know that there's something behind there at the very least, so I think it's good that Charlie found the secret panel. It's another lead, basically. Let's see. I think that's all there is about the Penhew Foundation to talk about. Of course, Gavigan didn't mention any of this shit to Tewfik, because he doesn't like Tewfik. Like, they pretty much only see each other at the monthly or weekly rituals or stuff like that. They don't talk to each other, really. Alright, so then, Barrington. James Barrington. As I said, I think it was very, very good that somebody got to actually speak to Barrington before he died. That was really good. They could have... I could have done it if they hadn't. The main clue that they really needed was the Blue Pyramid Club. Because that basically leads to Gavigan's mansion. They could have gotten there another way. like, if they... it's trickier. They would have had to go through Tufik somehow, and if they kind of tailed him for a while, of course he would eventually go out there. Or if they tail Gavigan, it would eventually lead out there. Or it says, I think in the companion, it's like if you're really sadistic, you can just have the investigators kidnapped and taken to the mansion for a ritual sacrifice. That's a bit much maybe for me, but yeah, that's an option. So they didn't get a great amount of info from Barrington other than the Blue Pyramid Club. And more mentions of Gavigan's name. The only other lead that I did not mention to them was about Tufik. But apparently Barrington had interviewed Tufik, and so they didn't find any information, or they didn't get anything out of the tale, but there was a name. And so I didn't want the lead to come from there. I didn't want them to get there independently, because I really like the angle there from Gavigan, so I'm hoping that happens. If they find out about Tufik, if they do something weird and they don't get the info from Gavigan, maybe we'll have the info come up some other way. Maybe from Mickey. Mickey still exists. I can always use him, but I guess, yeah, Mickey could be like, oh yeah, I heard that they all hang out at the Blue Pyramid. That's usually how stuff works in this campaign. There's usually a correspondent. So yeah, that was Barrington. Potentially a very good ally to have in London, but that was such a beautiful idea that I had to have him killed off. Like I could have picked anybody. I could have picked Gavigan. Holy shit! Because I don't. Oh man. Go kill Edward Gavigan tomorrow afternoon. Oh my god. I'm not even sure what would happen. Because Gavigan's mortal. I don't know if I could interfere that. Well, Gavigan is actually not that essential to the... He's actually probably the most important, least essential NPC in the campaign. Because some members are essential, Well, not essential, but more essential. Sir Aubrey being a big one, Mweru being a big one, Jack Brady's kind of important. There's people like that. But if Gavigan dies, and he can definitely die, they can kill him at some point, business kind of goes on as usual. It's not a big blow to the overall plan. Yeah, that could have been fucking something. They would have very little reason to stay in London after that, though. Because he is London, basically, for this campaign. So I didn't want to cut it that short. So, yeah. I could have had Mickey, but Mickey's not that important. They hadn't met Tufik yet, so I couldn't do that. I didn't want to do another player. That was pointless. I could have just I could have said the Queen or some shit, but no. No, I think Barrington was the best choice. That was solid. That was very solid. Okay. Let's see. What else is there to talk about? Yeah, I guess we'll move on to Golk. Alright, so... Let's see here. Well, the werewolf investigation. That was being dried up pretty quickly because they just could not find any information. I was giving them every lead I had, basically. I even had the drunk Cliff just basically spell it out for them. And they still just were not sure what they wanted to do. So that wasn't going to go anywhere. I really thought about having the werewolf attack during the night. But I felt like it would only prompt them to just leave rather than kill. Well, maybe they would have tried to kill it. Personally, I think that's probably the weakest part of the campaign so far, is the whole werewolf hunt. Because it's so pointless. And I think the players all realize it's pointless. And it's just kind of there to be like, hey, you're in the middle of nowhere. Die. So I wasn't a big fan of it, so that's kind of why I had Gulk push for the contact Nodens thing. Now, you may be asking, why would Nyarlathotep, if he likes being in his Gulk form and just tagging along and messing with these guys, why would he want to summon another deity that would so blatantly call him out? It's a very good question that I don't have a complete answer for. Maybe I didn't want Gulk to be around for that long in that capacity, because they were using him as kind of a skill mule. I could tell. They handed off books that they couldn't read. They handed off jobs that they couldn't do, lockpicking, stuff like that. They thought he was very useful. And I guess there's not really a great way to keep him around and be malicious, but they still keep him around and be, like, he's either useful or he's not, you know? And if he's not, they don't want to keep him around. And so I felt like, alright, let's just bring this to a head, and we'll kind of scramble up this group. We'll make this session pretty damn exciting, and we did. And we'll see where it goes from there. So that's basically it. I don't know if Nyarlathotep would have actually done that. That was more just me doing that. We had a bit of a separation moment. And so we summoned Nodens. I could have had him summon anything. I could have had him summon a fucking Shogoth. And if I promise you, if we get around to a new group, or at least, really, all it has to be is Charlie dying, to be honest. And that could happen next session pretty easily. Because Reginald is pretty loyal to Gulk now. He knows who Gulk is, he respects it, and he'll do whatever he says, basically. So, I'm okay with Reginald being part of it. But as long as Charlie dies, and he brings in a new character, and so it's all fresh people except for Reginald, Gulk will make a return. Be like, hi, I'm Gulk. Jonah sent me. Or actually, no, he'd be, I'm a friend of Reginald. Right? Yeah, Gulk's completely on the level. And it's going to be the hardest fucking metagame thing these players have ever had to do, is tolerate Gulk a second time. But it's great, because I can punish them for metagaming. I'm sadistic. And, okay. He's going to say, well, I know this ritual. Reginald could tell you about it. I can summon this elder god who will answer any question we ask him. That's right, he can. Oh, maybe we should do that. Huh? Yeah. If they let him summon Nodens again, if that ritual thing happens again, he will not summon Nodens. I swear to you, I promise. If I don't have that happen, you can call me out on so much bullshit all the time, because I promise you it'll happen. He will summon some horrible abomination. Like, I will go into the rulebook and find some horrible shit. Probably not like a great old one. Not like Atlaknaka or something like that. But probably like a Shogoth or something like that. And he'll just be like, ha, whoops! And there will probably be people dying, and he'll disappear again, and it'll be fucking hilarious. I promise you, I'll make it happen. Enough people died when Nodens appeared and called them out, so I'm sure a Shogun, oh god. So yes, so he summoned Nodens, he actually did. And we talked about this, if you remember. I pretty much repeated verbatim what I said I was going to say. And, but I was really expecting Charlie. He said something right away. He's like, what? He said that, and I was like, oh, here it goes. He's going to say, who is this guy? And Nodens was going to answer him. But Reginald was so on the ball with his question, just immediately. Nodens, where... And so I was like, oh, okay. Well, he's going to answer the question, of course. And so I was like... And so Nodens left, and they were all discussing this. And so I was like, well, if Nodens didn't really call him out, you know, not completely, I guess Gulk will just try and keep up the facade. But I could sense they weren't really buying it at this point. And I could have let it just go and be like, I don't know, I'm sorry. Let's head back into town. But I don't think they were really putting up with it. And so I was like, okay, the only way we can get out of this with a bang is if Gulk summons Nodens again. And so, of course, Gulk suggested it, and they eventually went along with it. And so there was a number of different ways I could have handled the actual revelation part. I was pretty settled on him saying, let's play, let's see how fast the puny humans can run. I was settled on that. I was really debating in the moment whether I wanted him to do it in the Gulk voice or in his deep Nyarlathotep voice. I settled on the deep voice because it was a bit more ominous, and I think they would have just laughed at the other one. Let's see how fast the puny humans can run. Just a bit too comical for the moment. Definitely could have had a TPK, but I don't really want that as a DM. That's just more a logistical thing. It's kind of a nightmare. You want to prevent that. Like, if you can actively prevent it as far as what you're controlling, you don't want a TPK. If it happens, like out of extreme stupidity, then it happens. But if you can control it, don't let a TPK happen. Not in this shit. Just don't go for it. I was settled immediately that at least one person is going to die. And Reginald actually bowed down. And I was like, okay. So Reginald spared himself by doing that. The other three ran. And so I was like, alright, I'll just kill, the slowest person. And sure enough, Alfred tripped. And I didn't give a shit who tripped. I was like, I don't care, you're dying. I'm not being squeamish about this one. So Alfred got impaled. And I could have killed all three of them right there, but again, that's not as fun to Nyarlathotep. And it's not as fun to me just be like, oh, you're dead. It was much more funny to both me and this guy to have Shin go break into Scotland Yard, rush into Scotland Yard with a katana, kill an inspector, and get beaten to a bloody pulp to death. That was much more amusing than just being impaled on a spike. So that's how that works. But he still needed to put the fear in them and kill somebody, because, hey, if you're going to be there, you might as well. So that's why Alfred died. So then Von Lyons, I didn't know what was going to happen with that. I was like Nyarlathotep, he needs a bit more amusement for the night, so he'll pop into Von Lyons and just see how it goes. He'll try to push some buttons, and that's exactly what he did. He mentioned his family, and even Ziggy messaged me later that night. He was like, if Ed hadn't witnessed, or if he hadn't listened in on, how the ritual went and how all those events just happened, he would have shot Gulk. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. And that would have been kind of amusing, but this is funnier to me because I won't really forget this. The naked, paralyzed, immortal man floating through space. It's kind of unforgettable. But yeah, that was probably metagaming. He also said that the other group, the group running from Nyarlathotep, was kind of metagaming. I disagree there on a few counts. One, basically this deity just called him out as, another dark deity. And called him a sniveling worm. And called him the crawling chaos and messenger of the outer gods. And then said flee from him. Just to be safe in that situation. When some powerful deity that flies in from space tells you to run from something, you probably listen. And then Gulk suddenly completely changing his voice and laughing, and then saying, let's see how fast the puny humans can run, you probably would run. So I didn't really see that as metagaming. So yeah, Von Lyons' immortality, that was pretty funny to me. I think we talked about that way back in the second Secrets of Rollmangan or something like that, when he talked about wanting to become immortal. He got his wish. Let's see. So then Gulk appearing in the bed and breakfast in front of Charlie. that was another thing where it's like, that was a very impromptu decision. Like, I did not have much time to think about this. I would have much preferred a more planned thing, but I was like, there's so much just chaos going on in these characters' minds. And I just, as he ran into the bed of breakfast, I was like, man, if this were a horror movie, he'd be sitting on the fucking bed. I was like, alright, I have to do that. And so, sure enough, Golk is sitting on the bed holding the stack of papers. It just seemed too perfect for me to just really think about it. And, so, Nyarlathotep is, of course, always in the deal-making mood. And so, I felt like Charlie was probably not going to have too much reason to live after this. Like, he's horribly disfigured. He's just witnessed this terrible, terrible dark god amidst his presence. And he just saw his friend impaled on a spike. And everything is just going to hell. His life is just de-raveling. And it was all terrible. And so it was like, let's just put a glimmer of hope back into it. Because, like I said, he was really crushed by the disfigurement thing. And so I had Golk say, you know, I heard that the Black Pharaoh made you ugly. And I chose those words specifically because I want him to refer to himself in the third person. Because Nyarlathotep loves that idea. That, you know, all these people worship different forms of him and don't realize that it's all him. And no player, I think, showed this better than Charlie, who carries like a vendetta against the Black Pharaoh. And so he mentioned in the Roll20 chat, he's like, what did he say? He's like, oh man, Nyarlathotep has like all these other like beings working for him. He's got like the Black Pharaoh and the Bloody God, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, what if like he's just working for some other even more powerful god? And you know, I'm just kind of, it was like, oh man, that's some deep thoughts, man. I'm just kind of laughing to myself because they're all Nyarlathotep, and you know, Nyarlathotep don't work for nobody. Now, of course, if you want to go by canon, he's the servant of Azathoth. I don't go by that canon. I make my own shit. Nyarlathotep fucking runs things, man. And so, yeah, so he took the mirror and he showed him, and his face was perfectly handsome. And yes, he would have made... He offered to make him the most handsome man in the world, and he would have done it. I would have shot his appearance up to 20, I swear to you. I wouldn't lie about that. He would do it. At what cost? That's kind of the painful thing for me, is to come up with a price on the fly. Because it needs to be... I guess it doesn't need to be balanced, but it needs to be a price that doesn't cause these characters to just give up. Debilitating, but just enough to keep going. And so, for just bringing back his looks, he took an arm. Which sucks. And more than I think Charlie really realizes yet. It sucks. But it's not, oh god, I can't go on with this character. You know, if he had taken both arms, then it'd just be like, what the fuck am I doing? Screw it. You know, at least he would retire or something, not, you know, and I would kill him or whatever. You wouldn't keep investigating. And so it's a bit tricky to come up with prices. So for now, the one-arm thing, that was fine. Okay, blah, 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 blah. The deal with Shin. I did put him in a tough spot, but that's what he fucking does. He's Nyarlathotep, man. He's not going to give you a great deal. It's would you rather. And sure enough, he would have just snapped his fingers, and you know, the mutilated corpses of Shin's family would appear in the hospital room next to him, if that's what if he provoked him or something. But of course, I almost was guaranteed he was going to pick the other option. And it's so funny to me. Shin's lack of trust kind of screwed him. Because Gulk said, as soon as you kill him, I will whisk you away to Japan, and you'll be in a penthouse or something. And Shin was so distrusting of Gulk, he says, I'll make my own way there. And even as he said it, was like, no, that's dumb. That's pretty dumb. Yeah, you don't... It reminds me of that movie I just watched, 13 Sins or whatever. Which I won't go into. And so, yeah. Gulk was going to be true to his word. If he had killed him, he would have snapped his fingers and he would have appeared in a penthouse in Japan. He probably would be a cripple for the rest of his life or something like that. But, yeah, it would have happened. And he would have been, free from any jurisdiction. Now, that may be, in that situation, the only way for Shin Katsu to continue as a character would be for his family to die. And you might be right. He may have been able to come up with a counter deal. Like if he had said, I'll kill this guy, but I want to continue operating as part of this team, or something like that. If he had really strived to be part of the team, Gulk might have gone for that. He probably still would have taken something from him. But I would have let that happen. But, yeah, if he had gone through with the mission, and whether he died in the act, or Gulk whisked him away, or whatever, that was pretty much the end of Shin. And that might be kind of an asshole-ish thing to do. Because this character was just introduced. But that's kind of how it works, man. They're going to have characters that come in for one session and die the same session. It's going to happen. So, I don't know. I'm fine with how it happened. I think it was kind of funny and very appropriate for what Nyarlathotep would have wanted. Okay. Let's see. So then, Reginald. Ziggy. Ziggy, he's kind of intrigued by this whole pact that he's made with Nyarlathotep. Because I think Ziggy, almost as a player, is getting caught up in the potential power from being allied with a god. And so I think he's having then his character just be like, I either, work with this guy or I'm dead. And I guess Reginald has strong survival instincts. And so he's going to do whatever it takes to keep working with him. But I think Reginald's taking it a step far. Or not a step far, but a step further. Ziggy messaged me last night on Facebook. And he's like, he was just kind of, just kind of speaking, in general. Just kind of bouncing things around. He talked about... we were talking about something with Nodens. Something with the Nodens ritual. And I was like, yeah, it's a shame you don't have that book. Otherwise you could have somehow learned French and gotten it translated, and you could have learned the ritual yourself. And he was like, oh, yeah. Oh, man. I wonder what it would cost for Gulk to give me the ability to read French. And I'm like, well, everything is just a question away. And so then he went into character mode. And he's like, that night in his bed, Reginald will invoke the name of Gulk. He'll be like, alright. I'll play along. He appears in bed next to you. And he's like, Golk, what would the price be for me to learn the French language? And Golk's like, And I thought about it. And what I had settled on to myself was he would give him the ability to speak perfect French. No flaws. In return, he would take away his ability to speak or read English. And I thought, that's just delightfully asshole-ish enough to be perfect. Because that's just gonna, like... Yeah, it probably isn't enough to make him quit his character, but it's enough to make for a hell of a lot of just pointless fun for me. But Golk just says, not much, but you'd have to accept the deal first. Because that's funner. Because Golk is in charge of the deals here, man. You don't get much leeway. And so Reginald is just like, oh, okay, well, thank you, I'll think about it. And so then, like, 15 minutes later, he's like, what if I had a counter deal for Golk? I'm like, I'm listening. He's like, let's say that Miles Shipley's masterpiece painting didn't burn in the fire. And it was in fact here in this very apartment. What if I brought victims, a victim to the painting every 3 days? Or I brought somebody to the painting every 3 days and let them have an extended viewing period. Would that be a deal? So he's saying that if Golk gives him the ability to speak and read perfect French, and Golk brings back, or recreates the Shipley masterpiece painting that sends people to the serpent time, Reginald, every 3 days from thenceforth, while he's in London, only if he's in London, he will bring somebody to the painting and have them get sucked through into it. That's the deal. And Golk says, very well. But if you miss one of the deadlines, I will send one of your friends through the painting. And Reginald, he was a little bit conflicted in that moment. He's like, well, that is a very interesting security policy, insurance policy you have there, Golk. But I accept. And Golk's like, very good. The first deadline is the 14th. And he disappears. Reginald runs immediately downstairs to his office. He pulls out this recent letter that he got from a mayor of Paris or whatever that was dissatisfied with the piano. And he couldn't read the letter. And he's like, what about now? And I'm just like, fluent. And so he like laughs to himself and he runs back up and goes to bed. And I'm like, okay, put your French skill at 90, which is pretty fucking good. And so yeah, that was the secret deal that he made, and I purposefully did not mention it in regular role Mangging because I didn't want the others to know that he's making secret deals with Golk. I doubt that will be the last deal. Now, Golk is of course evil. Nyarlathotep is evil, no doubt about it. But this is a much more interesting prospect. Rather than just kill this guy, this is much more fun if he just leads him along. And he's not going to try and, like I said, he's not going to try to kill him with the deals, and he's not going to try and dissuade him too much from continuing to make deals, in such a way as, he's done living. I can't handle this anymore. He's going to make the deals kind of tantalizing. But he's also going to make the deals, much like this one, that may affect those around him. So maybe instead of taking one of Reginald's limbs, he'll take, his buddy Sancho's limb. Or his butler Stefan's limb. Something like that. As Nyarlathotep just watches as this once upstanding gentleman's, character degrades into darkness. And he lets it, Reginald lets this happen because of the allure. That I like. So, yeah, now Reginald is going to be sacrificing random people, apparently, to the painting. If he does this, every time he does it, he's going to lose a little sanity. As he realizes what the fuck, he's murdering people. They're, maybe not first degree, but it's murder. And his consciousness will reflect this. So, I guess if murder is worth learning French, personally, I'm learning French without murdering people, but some people want the quick way, And Golk is happy to oblige. And so, yeah, if he misses a deadline for whatever reason while he's in London, I'll send somebody through the painting. I'll maybe just roll like a D4 or some shit. But I'll fucking do it. That's what happens. God. So, anyways, I really do want to try to keep back on track, though. We had some craziness with Golk and all that, and like I said, I'm running this way off script. Nyarlathotep is not supposed to be this prevalent at all, because in Cairo, there's an encounter that they can have in the Bent Pyramid. There's like an inner sanctum in there that they can find. And the Black Pharaoh appears to them. And it's supposed to be like one of the biggest moments of the campaign. And so obviously I'm kind of diminishing that quite a bit. Because Nyarlathotep is just, he's there. I'm okay with that decision. Because I'm making this my own. I like that a lot. But, yeah, Nyarlathotep is not supposed to be that prevalent. He's supposed to just appear in the Bent Pyramid, and that's mostly it. He does appear in his various forms occasionally. Like at the big moments of the campaign, he'll appear as the god of the bloody tongue, or as the bloated woman, or as the sand bat, the father of all bats. But yeah, he doesn't appear as much as I am having it, but I'm okay with that. Well, I do want to get it back on track because it's still an amazing campaign, regardless of what I'm messing up. And so that's why Golk was like, "You better continue this investigation, Reginald, or I'm going to be bored." Because that's basically me as a DM saying, "You better continue this investigation, or I'm going to be bored." So I think, yeah, with some new members of the party and Reginald Reginald is basically a cultist now. That's basically what it is. It's kind of wonderful. But yeah, I think they're going to get back on track now. Golk is not going to appear too much. Once Charlie's gone, he'll appear, but he'll kind of just be the normal Golk again. And it'll just kind of keep going along like that. So I'm hoping they look into kind of that's basically all there is left, is this kind of whole Gavigan, Tufik, Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh cult thing going on. So I think they're really going to dive into that next session. They're going to maybe break into the Penhu Foundation. They're maybe going to find out about Tufik and deal with their perception of him, whether he actually is this cult leader or he's just a guy that sells spices. Maybe they're going to get to the mansion. Maybe they'll experience this big cult ritual, which will fucking drive them all insane. It's hard to say, but Reginald does kind of have a bit of protection now. Now that he is kind of a devout cultist, Nyarlathotep may shield him from some harm from time to time, whether it be physical or mental. Just so he can kind of keep dragging him along and be like, you know, yes, you have been most loyal. I will protect you, just so we can keep these horrible deals going as Reginald continues to sacrifice, you know, the world around him. And even Ziggy was like, you know, it's probably going to become a problem if at some point Reginald relates more to Nyarlathotep than he does his fellow investigators. And I'm like, fuck yeah. It's like, who are you really working for, you know? Because, like, I'm like, you know, you're not really battling Nyarlathotep, you're finding out what happened to the Carlisle expedition, but you're battling Nyarlathotep, that's the point of the campaign, and if you're working for the guy, and it's slowly diminishing the actual investigation, it's beautiful. You can't plan shit like that. So, yeah, I'm really pleased with that. I'm going to try to string that along as much as I can. So Reginald may see many sessions yet to come. Assuming, now, if the giant bomb goes off next to him, maybe, you know, bad things happen. But, yeah, I'm definitely very interested with where this goes. Yeah. But I think that's pretty much it. Next session should be a lot less crazy. But I am very interested to see what happens with Reginald, how far down the rabbit hole he goes. But I'm also very interested to just see, you know, how it goes with Gavigan and the cult. That's still very interesting to me. But I just had to put my own spin on it, of course. And Ziggy is also definitely talking about going to Egypt soon. Especially now with this thing that he's got held over his head, that because he's still holding on to his morality a little bit, that he doesn't want to sacrifice that many people, you know. So he's going to try to get out of London sooner now, so he has to sacrifice less people. But there's still plenty to do in London. Of course, Cairo is the logical next step, so I'm glad he mentioned Cairo, because Reginald's pretty much the leader of the group at this point, especially if I keep him alive a little longer. So it's good that he's going to go to Cairo, because that is the next stop. And then after Cairo, it is finally Kenya, and they get to the Mountain of the Black Wind, that is a pretty big fucking moment. And they know about the Mountain of the Black Wind now. But, yeah, so that's going to wrap me up for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I still enjoy these Secrets of Role Mangging videos, as I just got to kind of talk about how sadistic I am. And we get to talk about how much fun we're having. So, my name is Mang. This has been Secrets of Role Mangging for Masks of Nyarlathotep. And I'll see you fine folks next week.